That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Oh, no tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering.
Fairly alarmed here.
Welcome to MOTN Reviews. This is Masters of the Nerdiverse Reviews, where we review some of cinematic supernovas of the Nerdiverse and some that are not so brightly lit. You can always find this horror house of a podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and Spotify. Spotify was a tough one to get on, but we're there, and you can definitely listen to our content as you see fit. I'm, of course, your host, Mike G. And with me today, I'm happy to introduce to the Nerdiverse, Whitney. How's it going?
Hi, guys. It's good. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a sunny day so far. Dogs barking, birds chirping. No, nothing to complain about.
I like it.
Absolutely. So the movie that we're talking about today really doesn't need any introduction.
No.
I think it kind of reshaped the zeitgeist, I would say, for horror, kind of in the same vein that Scream did. Where,
absolutely.
You know what I mean? Where it was more of a reinvention of the genre that spurred not as many copycats as Scream did, but it did shake things up in a genre that needs to be shaken up every generation or so, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, and I feel like there hasn't really been anything that is close to this since this movie premiered. Like I can't remember the last horror movie before that, like after this one that I've seen.
Absolutely.
That was crazy enough.
Absolutely, and this definitely dials the crazy to 11. This goes to 11. And of course, we're talking about the film Cabin in the Woods, as you saw from the opening. Whew, this movie.
Yes. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in.
It really amps itself up in such a fashion that, like you said, has not been done in horror film since. You know.
Well, you know that, and I don't want to take anything away from what you're about to say, but you know how the beginning when it opens, it's the two scientists and they're just talking.
Yeah.
And they're talking about fertility drugs and like regular 9 to 5 chatter. And the guys that did the movie, they did that to throw people off, to make them think that they walked into the wrong theater.
That's hilarious. I believe it. And one undercurring theme of this film is the submersion of expectation. You know what I mean? Things are always flipped on their heads in the film.
Yes, nothing is as it seems in the movie.
Absolutely. And that's one thing, after just recently rewatching it, I love about this movie is that even like you mentioned in the intro of the film, it's a complete submersion of expectation. You're expecting a horror movie to grab you like they usually do. You know, Wes Craven famously said, when you're making a horror film, you hit them hard in the beginning. You jolt them into attention, and then you don't have to hit.
Yeah, like if you think about like Scream with the beginning, and Drew Barrymore, you were not expecting that at all, because I think she was like the headliner for that movie. Like that's who they advertised for their like main star, and they killed her in the first 5 minutes of the movie. So I mean, that's what you're expecting with this, and you come into these two scientists, Richard Jenkins and Bradley Whitford, who I love both of them, and they're both just so like sarcastic and just, it's just their 9-to-5 job. No big deal.
Absolutely. And it adds a level of security that is constantly taken away from you in this movie. It's such a relax.
You never know, you can tell when something is going to have a jump scare or whatever. You can tell when something's coming. And in this, you don't really know what's going on. You have no idea why you're looking at these scientists. You have no idea why you're in a lab. Right. And they do a really good job of keeping that a secret through the whole thing.
Exactly. This movie is very much carrot and the stick. You know what I mean? Where they lull you into a false sense of security with this opening that, like you said, they're just having 9-to-5 conversation, and it hits you with that jump scare intro, Cabin in the Woods. You're like, what is this movie? You're completely thrown off.
Yes, it does the scream intro, like an actual scream you can hear when the titles come up, and then all of a sudden you're not in with the lab, but you're sitting there and you're like jarringly transferred into this college apartment with these college
Right.
kids.
And this is the introduction to Dana, Holden, Marty, Jules, and Kurt, who are our titular kind of, I would say, protagonists in a way.
Yeah. I mean, they're just kind of, they don't know what they are really, and we don't either. We're not really sure, because at first you think that this is just a regular cabin in the woods movie where, you know, there's some unspeakable evil that's going to happen, and, you know, it's going to be them running and from something with knives, like chasing them, and it is, but it's not.
Exactly.
At the same time.
And even their introductions is a submersion of expectation, because there are certain characters that are acting their archetypal stereotype. Like, you know, I believe Jules is the titular stoner, and he's that throughout the film. He doesn't really break that sense, you know.
Oh, Marty. Yes,
I'm sorry.
Marty.
Thank you.
That's who it is. He's the stoner. Yeah, I was like, is Jules the stoner?
Apologies.
I couldn't remember. He keeps that up through the whole thing. Like, it's very stereotypical.
But then you have Chris Hemsworth's character, who, because of their influence, his whole entire personality adjusts as the movie goes on.
Right. Well, you know, when Jules comes into the room at first, you know, they're shocked that she's dyed her hair blonde. And then they make a point later on that her hair is dyed blonde, and it has chemicals in it that actually make her dumber. Like, she's the dumb blonde.
And then it asks more questions to where, how long have they been scoping these kids? You know, like how long have they, maybe it's within the year time frame that this has to happen, because apparently they drop a line that this has to happen every year across the world. You know what I mean?
Right. And all the countries compete with each other.
And only one necessarily needs to complete the ritual perfectly, you know.
Right. That's it. So, you know, they pretty much got it, like, in the bank, they think, with all the other countries. And it
doesn't really work out for them. So the movie progresses as they jump into their Swiss Family Robinson RV and kind of start heading down to a cabin, which is not necessarily just really thoroughly described as who owns this cabin or how exactly they say like, oh, it's for my cousin or something, like my uncle's old cabin.
Yeah, it's like her cousin, but it's like, how did you not know that this stuff? How did you not know about that? Like, I don't know. It was is a bit of a plot hole, because they're like, oh, but I guess you could attribute it to, you know, maybe they've brainwashed them into thinking that it's his cousin's cabin. You know, I mean, they could use those chemicals,
or at least brainwashed him to say, oh, this is my cousin's cabin. Don't ask questions. It's on the lake. We're going to have a good time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they would have no reason to question him.
During the drive to their, what was it, Marty, the stoner character, he kind of breaks down another, I would say, underlining storyline for this film. It's that society as itself maybe needs to be eradicated, you know, due to needing a reboot. And that, you know, what did he say? He said, a society is binding, you know, it's filling in all the cracks with concrete, and that's bad. It's not, you know, everyone he wants to go somewhere where he's not going to be globally positioned, as he likes to put it.
Yes, exactly. And you think, like, the whole time, you know, he's this big stoner, so you're like, oh, he's not making any sense. Like, of course, like, he's got all these weird out there theories, because that's the stereotypical, you know, person that
imbibes.
And it's not, you know, and it turns out, you know, Marty's onto something.
Yeah, Marty is the meta of the film, because he's what the audience is talking. He's the audience talking to itself. You know what I mean?
Exactly. He mimics everything the audience is thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And then they dismiss him just as the film dismisses the audience's input, because it cannot react with it. You know what I mean? So
exactly. So they're just like, oh, Marty, you're crazy.
Oh, Marty, get out of here, man.
Oh, Marty, typical Marty.
Right. And them not heeding that, and them, you know, going forward, not heeding the warnings, or at least the bad omens of what did they call the guy at the gas station? The Harbinger. I love the Harbinger. Yeah. He's so out of control. And that harkens back to, you know, Friday the 13th. you're going to Camp Blood, ain't you? You're gonna die if you go there. And they were like, you crazy old guy, get out of here.
Yeah, he was, and he the Harbinger really liked his role, and it's seen when he calls back in, and Bradley Whitford's character Hadley, I think that was his name.
Yeah.
So what do you buy? He, he's like laughing because the guy is so dramatic on the phone, and he's saying the lambs have been led to the slaughter, and they're all like, the whole company is like kind of giggling, and he's like, wait a second, you guys got me on speakerphone?
And then he breaks character because he's offended that they put him on speakerphone.
Right.
It's so good,
Yes, like just start cracking up at him. You almost feel bad for him.
Yeah, because he's like, they are the Lord's fools, and the skies will run crimson. He's like, you put me back on speakerphone, did you? And everybody just starts laughing.
And I'm back on speakerphone. Yes, and he, and then they all start cracking up, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to."
What happens next? Totally, right? And it keeps the movie fun. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of comic relief in this movie,
and and
Marty serves a ton of it. Marty is he's not trying to be, but it is funny because when you think about horror movies, most of the time the characters are idiots,
right?
And they're more, they do stuff where not any normal person would do that in a situation. And Scream touched on it a ton when they made it. They talked about like running up the steps when you should be running out the front door,
right?
So Marty just kind of is the only one not, he just reacts just like you said, just like the audience. Why would we split up? Like, that's the dumbest idea ever. Why would we, he's questioning it.
Exactly. As you would question it. And he's being ignored as, like I mentioned, as the film ignores these common questions that you think the writing team and the production team would ask these same questions. But it's like, that breaks the rhythm of horror. Because I was just thinking about that there's really two main motivations to any horror film, and they're very different motivations. A horror film is either going to want you leaving the theater to have had a good time, like The Evil Dead,
right?
The Evil Dead by Sam Raimi. At the end of that movie, you've had a good time. You were on a roller coaster, and you leave the theater grinning. You know what I mean? That was crazy. Or a horror movie just wants to scare the living mess out of you,
like Hereditary.
Oh, don't get me started on Hereditary. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I had to spoil that one for myself before I watched it because I was actually too scared. So I knew a lot of those parts were coming up.
That movie, it's been a very long time since this old horror head got that shook from a horror film. And I was like, okay, this messed me up for a couple of days.
Oh yeah, it'll stick with you.
Absolutely. So they're at the cabin, and then you kind of start to see the inner workings of this corporation or this cabal, or you don't really get a full big picture of the corporation that's running this horror funhouse, where they're checking life signs, they're checking vitals, they're checking, pH balances, everyone's on the screen. Yeah. You start to get the big picture of like how granular their grip on this situation is.
Right. So they're, it's actual scientists working in this lab to finish this ritual that they need to complete. And it's not, they've literally got it down to a science.
Yeah. And also that what feeds into that is actually more disturbing is you think about the comedic end of the science team of the corporation, but then you start to think like,
yes,
they're so relaxed doing this. How long have these people have been having to submit teenagers to this, Yeah.
And that's what the one, who's
the security guard. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he's new on the job, and he is absolutely appalled at all of these people that are sitting there taking bets on what type of horror is going to kill all these kids. And they're laughing about it. And, and they have, one of them even says, oh, it's the girl. And I forget her name, the girl scientist from,
I know
I forget her name. She works in the Kim department.
Mm-hmm.
I believe.
Absolutely.
And she says, it's just a way for us to let off steam because it's such a heavy job.
It's literally world-ending circumstances that are on the board, and everyone has to be doing their job right.
So can't focus on it too much, or they lose
Exactly.
their
So
mind.
it just builds this world even more. You know what I mean? Like, and then
Right.
one of my favorite scenes of the movie, not my favorite, but I think my favorite is everyone's favorite, but we'll get there. Is when they go into the basement and they start seeing the choice
Oh my
options.
gosh. But be honest, were you a little bit disappointed with what they ended up
Yeah,
choosing?
I thought it was a bit safe.
I did too. So I
Yeah.
thought with the options that they had, you see Jules putting on this necklace. There's a mannequin that's standing there with like a very vintage looking
Mhm.
wedding gown. You've got Marty doing the like
the
Hellraiser
puzzle
puzzle.
sphere. I was super down for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and Kurt picks up the merman
He's
conch,
just about to
like
blow it.
oh yeah, so close, so close. And then they went with the
Buckners.
they call them the
Mhm.
what do they call? They call them
They call them the zombie redneck
undead
torture family.
worshipping torture. Yes, yes. And I was like, really? We've seen that so many times. There could have been, and we'll get to how many options.
I think this would be a good time to actually get into that. And I have the list up here right now where we can list off every single one.
Oh, good.
Sweet. Great minds think alike.
So,
but I think the reason they made that choice is because it does harken back to the old classics like Evil Dead. You know what I mean? They're technically slasher villains. You know what I mean? So it pays homage to that. And they kind of act like Deadites. So there you go. So it could have been what any of these other options. Some of them could have been duller than what we got. So I'm kind of happy. You know,
I agree. But if you look, the board is that what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, because this is the scene where where the bet's done and everyone's arguing.
Yes, you see the board, and my favorite one is just something named Kevin. It just says Kevin. Mm-hmm. Who the hell is Kevin? What is he going to do?
Kevin? Who's Kevin? What is he going to do? Right. So let's go through this crazy list real quick. Okay. So we have werewolves. We have alien beasts.
Which I think is a nod to the Predator.
Yep. We have alien, which is a nod to the Predator. We have mutants. We have the Wraith, which I think was the ghost guy, but the one that was.
Yeah, I think the Wraith. You see the Wraith toward the end.
We have zombies, which is of course a pull to Night of the Living Dead and all. They're not infected. They're just legit Romero zombies.
Right.
We have Reptilicus, which is an awesome name, and I think it's the giant cobra, right?
Yeah, the giant snake.
Yes, we have clowns, we have witches, we have sexy witches.
Which is a nod to it.
Yep, absolutely. Pennywise. We have demons. We have the Hell Lord, which is the
Pinhead.
Homage to Clive Barker's Hellraiser. Yep. We have Angry Molesting Tree, which is
nod to Evil Dead, which also their cabin looks exactly like the cabin from Evil Dead.
Yes.
Did you notice that?
Absolutely. It's almost identical in a weird way.
I know. I wondered if it was like the same one.
Me too. Actually, Reptilicus must have been something else because we also have Giant Snake on here.
Maybe we didn't see Reptilius.
I don't know. That's very weird. We just have Deadites on here, which is crazy.
I know, because you would think that I don't know that I was shocked that.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that's a good pull. And we have your titular Kevin. Who knows?
Kevin.
Who knows who Kevin was?
Well, and see, nobody banked on Kevin either.
Nope.
Because you see who voted for who is betting on each one, and Kevin. I would have picked Kevin.
Yeah, nobody had faith that Kevin would get the job done, apparently.
No, nobody had faith Kevin was going to pull through. I have tons of faith in Kevin. I don't know what he does, but the name Kevin alone on a board of monsters is scary.
It's way more alarming. I would pick Kevin over Hell Lord,
Right. What did Kevin do?
Why is it just Kevin? We have a mummy. We have the Bride, which I'm thinking is a callback to the Japanese Sadako kind of maybe like the ring kind of ghost presence. We have the Scarecrow folk. I don't know what that means.
Which reminds me of Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah.
That guy was kind of
The creeper, right?
Yeah.
We have a snowman. We have a dragon bat, which we see a lot of.
You see a lot of the dragon bat.
Yeah, we have vampires. We have
the next one's a new one.
we have dismemberment goblins, which I think we see. I think we see them. We have
I don't know.
we have is the little girl with the monster mouth the sugar plum fairy?
Say it again. You cut out for just
I'm sorry. Is the little girl with the kind of leech face in the ballerina dress?
No.
Which one was she?
Yes, in the ballerina dress, and she's got, instead of a face, it's just a mouth with all the really
With
sharp
the rows
teeth.
of teeth, right?
She doesn't have a. The sugar plum fairy. That's who that is.
We have the merman, which is he gets his time to shine.
Yeah, and Hadley. That's who Hadley bets on.
Absolutely. We have the reanimated, which is a pull to reanimator by Stuart Gordon. We have the
from.
I'm sorry.
The unicorn.
My favorite.
It was so funny because you don't expect unicorns aren't supposed to be.
And it wasn't even evil. It looked real majestic and beautiful.
It did. It was just like, get out of my way, sir. Maybe it was just mad that it had been locked up.
Yeah, it was
so
just
long.
bucking, and it had this weird weird fantasy music that went on when it was like at its scene.
Yes. And it stabbed that guy quite a few times. It was a very angry.
It was super upset about something.
Well, I'd be upset too if I had to stay in a cage all the time.
Right. We have the Huron, which I think.
I don't know what that is.
I think it's a pull to ancient Native American kind of like mythology. The Huron is some kind of evil spirit in Native. I could be wrong about that, but I've heard that that's what the Huron technically is.
Okay, because that's what a Wendigo is too. Wendigos in Pet Cemetery.
Oh yeah, I just learned that the Pet Cemetery actually was about Wendigos. That kind of trips me out.
It's only in the book.
Yeah. Oh.
But they're bringing it to the new movie. It's going to be in the new
Pet
movie.
Cemetery hits me right in the heart. We have Sasquatch / Wendigo / Yetis.
Yeah, they're all kind of grouped together.
We have one of my favorites, which is just dolls.
Which dolls are creepy.
Have you ever seen that movie, Dolls?
A long time ago. I can remember it in the video store when I was a kid.
Here.
And it's a doll thing, and it's holding its eyeballs
Absolutely.
out the cover. It's holding two eyeballs.
Like towards the box.
Yes. Yeah. I can vividly remember the cover of
that movie. We have the doctors.
We see them. We see the doctors.
Who have like the strangers vibe about them. You know what I mean?
The doctors?
Well, the doctors are the ones with the white masks with the black suits, right?
No, I thought the doctors are the ones when they walk in, and the doctors are the only ones that are left in between the elevators.
Okay.
And they're like eating.
I thought those were the zombies
because they have they're wearing like scrubs, and one of them has one of those head
stethoscope
like
things.
The lights that that doctors wear on their head. I just assumed that was the doctors. Maybe I'm wrong.
I have to look into that.
Because I think why did I think? But there were three of them. I was thinking the twins were like the strangers.
Yeah, because I didn't see them on this list. Well, there was three of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. So they can't be the twins.
Well, we have the zombie redneck torture family, who's takes center stage. We have Jack O'Lantern. I don't know.
Which reminds me of Pumpkinhead.
We have just Giant, who I don't think makes an appearance because I don't remember a Giant.
No, I don't remember a Giant. I don't remember the twins either.
And then we have twins. So, once they kind of go through and decide that the Buckners are going to be the ones putting in work, then we get to the scenes where where the security guard, who's kind of like he's another audience. I would say, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like a representation of the audience.
And he's like, well, why do you guys have to watch them get it on? And he's just like, we're not the only ones watching.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
It makes me think about how each culture has its own horror archetypes that need to be sated for that respective old one to kind of dig it,
Right. Because they show, I think that's right when they show the Japanese version of it, and it's all the little schoolgirls in the classroom, and it's a ghost that looks
The
like
Ring.
the
It was like
Samara
Samara,
from The
yeah.
Ring.
It is like it's the
Samara,
coolest thing because it makes me think like, man, if they didn't just kill this franchise, or maybe it's still alive somewhere, you could have had a Cabin in the Woods for Italian horror, for the Gialli films, for,
exactly.
you know what I mean, for like African horror, for like Spanish, for Japanese, for J horror, you know. So,
Yeah, they could do a ton with it. And when we saw when you look at the Japanese ones, I mean, I felt bad because it's like I'm a mom, so I'm like, those little kids, like they would be so scared if that was happening. And they do a good job. I mean, they do seem
they
very
take care of
scared.
business though, the little ones. So
Yeah, they do.
the movie starts ramping
They-
up at this point because what was I'm sorry, the titular blonde's name? That was Jules, right?
Jules. Yeah, that's
Dana,
Jules,
right.
and the redhead is Dana.
And that's where she has to die first. They said that no matter what, the unchaste one, I would say, has to die first, and then it can, as long as the unchaste one dies first and the virgin dies last, or then everything's groovy.
Everything's fine. But they'll really start amping her up with her actions beforehand. In that whole scene where they dare her to make out with the taxidermied wolf head on the. I can't look at it. Like, it grosses me out so much. I have to, like, that. I can watch people get dismembered all day long, but that, like, makes me so, like, uncomfortable that I, like, literally turn my head whenever that part comes on.
Isn't it always the little things that really get your goat? Like, I could watch, I could watch someone be decapitated on screen, but if someone peels a nail off, it just gets me every time. Just,
yes, no. No, can't do that.
Can't do it.
Nope, that, or if any sort of animal dies. No.
Can't do it.
I checked doesthedogdie.com before almost any, as soon as any animal shows up in a movie.
Nope. That's a 10 for a good buddy.
Yep. See you later. I turn it off. It's exactly why I haven't watched The Conjuring.
Don't do it. So you start seeing the chemicals really start to take effect. You know, because I have the understanding that the entire cabin is just laced with these chemicals that are being pumped through for each respective member, you know.
But I can't figure out what Dana's is.
Dana starts to act more, she starts to act more
like
innocent. And like when she was making out with, I want to say, is it Holden?
Holden is his name, yeah.
She starts to make out with Holden, and then she pulls away. But then he says, he's cool with it. He's like, whatever you do, whatever you want to do, I'm not going to pressure you. She's like, well, this is my first time. And then she doubles back and says, this isn't my first time.
Oh, that's right. She's like, why did I say that?
Yeah. So you start to see her effects even a little bit.
Yeah. So they must just be pumping the cabin filled with all those chemicals.
Right. And he begins to start formulating plans like, the scholar. He's the one who's, maybe we should split up. You're just like, yeah, let's do it.
And Marty's like, why would we split
he's
up?
Like, he's like, how does that make sense? And then the door just busts down,
Yes.
Such good stuff. And then, we start getting, the deaths start kind of rolling in with Marty actually figuring out, that they're being, he at first believes that he's on a reality show. You know what I mean? He's like, because.
Yeah. He starts to look for, well, we'll get to it. I don't want to skip ahead because we're going to skip the part where the Buckners actually show up.
And that's right when the Buckners start coming through, and you have that siege moment in the cabin where they go in, where some of them go into the basement. I believe it's Dana.
Yeah, but at this point, they've already killed Jules, so they're out. They were out, her and Kurt, and they like make it all romantic with the moonlight, and then the Buckners show up and totally destroy the moment, and. They chop her head off.
And they decapitate her, and it's rough. It
is, man. You feel really bad for her because there's no way that Saul made it through in one go.
And I think because this movie has such a heavy preamble that you really care for these characters actually a little bit, like they're not just they're not just horror movie fodder. When she eats it, you're like, oh, I kind of want to, you kind of know how these things go.
Well, you're kind of sad that because she dies pretty early in the
Mhm.
movie, so you're kind of sad that she bites it so
And they have
quick.
no time to react. Like, Dana's like, no, I'm going to go find her. And she opens the door, and homeboy pretty much just football lobs her head to her.
Yeah, and then she's just holding on to her friend's head.
And it's such a good prop. I was really looking at that prop early. It looks dead on just like her.
I would too. It does.
You know.
It does. It looks. They did a good job. Good job.
Good
props
job,
on it.
guys. You
Way to go.
get cookies and juice. That's what you guys get.
Yes. Gold
And
stars.
3 gold stars. Not 5 because the head wasn't moving, but it was a moving face and stuff.
Right. There wasn't any bit of spine hanging out, which would have made it a little more realistic. But
nope, you would have got the coveted 5 stars. Till next time.
you can try again.
You always try again. So then we get the idea that Marty is taking out because the room tells him to go outside very forcefully.
Yeah, it's like go outside, and he like what? He like thinks somebody's in the room with him.
He's like, and it's just like go outside now. Yeah. He's like, okay, I super know I heard that.
That is definitely not me just being
like,
stoned.
And he's like, you know what? I'm gonna go outside.
and that's when they show up to take care of Marty.
Yeah, Marty kind of eats it to one of the Buckner brothers or Buckner siblings.
That's a really painful moment too, because don't they throw? Yeah. Or no, maybe it's Jules that they throw the bear claw trap at her.
No,
or do they do that to Marty?
They throw the active bear trap at Marty's back, and it clips him.
Oh yeah, and it makes me like arch my back when I watch that part.
And then they assume that he's dead.
Yeah, he gets dragged into some weird hole, and you're like, oh well, there goes Marty.
Well, there goes that. And every time someone dies, they pull like this crazy Rube Goldberg lever that indicates that one of the 5 have died, and the blood, and somehow they drain the blood of the body into the sacrificial chamber. I don't know how that works. I don't
either, and I guess we're just not supposed to wonder about it. But
yeah, it's one of those things. Yeah. So we're getting to the part where they try to escape the cabin. They just get in their car and go. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And probably the only thing that keeps this movie from being absolute perfection is that in the beginning of the movie they ruined this jump scare. They ruined the jump, and what I'm saying is that they try to get to the bridge at the last second. The dev team, as it were, take out the bridge, and Chris Hemsworth's character gets the idea. I'm just going to jump the bridge on my bike. I can do it.
Yes, and this is before he was Thor, so
yeah. So and everyone knew he was becoming Thor, and they're like, "Oh, I just want to see this guy in action." You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're kind of all excited because they actually filmed this in 2009, and it got delayed because the movie studio wanted to turn it into 3D, but Josh Whedon said no, and so he fought them, and it took him a couple years before he got his way and said, "No, we're not doing it 3D."
I remember this movie having a lot of whispers about it because it was supposed to come out way earlier. Like you said, there was a very big pause. And like, what is Cabin in the Woods?
That happened. Sorry, I'm cutting you off. Usually
you're okay.
Stuff like that happens. You assume the movie's going to be bad. I do.
Right. Because in these situations, usually when the movie's being held for rewrites and reshootings and recuts, you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like the horror movie version of X-Men was supposed to come out last April, and it's still not out.
Oh, don't get me started on Dark Phoenix. Oh, geez.
Oh, I'm not excited about that at all. But there was another one too, I thought, that was supposed to come out, and it had like a whole different generation of X-Men.
Yeah, New Mutants. It was supposed to be a comic book horror movie.
Yes.
So we're still all collectively holding our breaths on that one, but the gag is already up because there's a very quick shot in the movie where a pigeon or a pelican or something tries to fly across the ridge and it hits that electric honeycomb and just explodes.
So it's not going to make it.
Right. And I wish that scene was taken out of the film because I think the pop would have been even bigger if you saw Chris Hemsworth slam into that grid and had no idea what was coming.
Well, they even showed the bird hitting the electric fence, the invisible fence, in the trailer.
I hate that. And
I remember seeing that in the trailer.
I think that's the one thing that keeps this movie from being perfect for me. It's just because that really would have been a very big pop. I think if people would have saw that and said, there's just no getting out of this situation. Like, but you already know. So when he starts to think about it, you as an audience member are already like, oh, he's just not going to make it. No worries. We're just going to see him scrap.
You're like, yeah, you just know. It's like, well, goodbye, Thor. It was good.
Yeah, he had a good run. So,
it was good.
Right. So that happens, and Dana and Holding, try to drive back and say, we're just going to drive in a direction. This thing can't be completely enclosed, right?
Now, this was a good, I felt like this next thing that you're going to say was a good jump scare.
Oh, yeah, because he's trying to relax her. He's trying to, hey, just relax. We got this under control. Everything's going to be and then a Buckner is just in the backseat chilling the whole time.
Right? Goes straight through his neck.
Yeah.
Very violent death.
And then he's done. And they just slam into the lake, which reminds me a lot of Friday the 13th. And then
the whole scene right there.
Yeah. It's super good. It's super good.
Yeah, but it's very reminiscent of Friday the 13th.
Absolutely. And then back at the headquarters, they're partying because they think that ritual's done. It doesn't really matter what happens at this point.
Oh, yeah. They're popping bottles and I mean, everybody's like raging because they're like, yeah, we saved the world. And then, and in the background, it's like a nice contrast because in the background, I can't remember what song is playing.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
In the background, they have a big video of Dana being, attacked over and over again by one of the Buckners. And she just is, she's being flung all around this dock when he wraps a chain around her and he's choking her. He's doing everything he can to her. And that's when the security guard is confused why they're celebrating because she's still alive.
Yeah. And then they have to break down, well, she is the final girl. According to the ritual, it doesn't matter if she lives or dies as long as she suffers. And we can all agree that she's suffered, And
say that she definitely suffered.
Right. And then, they have this weird kind of situation where everyone's trying to mingle and one guy gets shot down because he offers one of the other devs like tickets to the opera or something.
It's Ronald the intern that gets shut down, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, he's like, poor guy. Like, I didn't need that in this movie.
He's just trying to attend his work party and, maybe make some friends, maybe network a little. And which if you think about it, it's funny that they even have interns. How did they get an intern?
Right.
How did they advertise for it?
Like, what kind of umbrella corporation is this? You know what I mean?
Right. What secret advertising agency is putting out these messages to get like interns in there without blowing their whole cover?
Yeah, like as soon as you sign the dotted line, it's like, yeah, your life is ours now. You can't talk about this. You can't go outside. Yeah.
Right. You might as well just live here.
Yeah, you just live here now, dude. It's too funny. But then they get that dreaded call from upstairs that, no, this is not over yet. Someone's still alive. And they say, who? And then we get the reveal that Marty somehow survived his ordeal.
Yes. So he's, and you're actually really excited that, because Marty's like, I would say he's probably the fan favorite. So everyone's excited that Marty's still alive.
Yeah, because he's us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, you're rooting
for him. So Martin, and this is where the movie just really starts to get out of control, because Marty then finds in his tussle with one of the Buckners that there's a whole network underground of this cabin, this unassuming cabin.
So he saves Dana. Mm-hmm. He saved her from the Buckner, and refresh my memory. I can't remember how they get down into how do they go back to the cabin and they go in the basement and they figure out that there's a way into the lab?
They go back to the cabin and there's like a shed, or there's like a tornado shelter or something like that on the ground. She's like, why are we going in there? And he just opens it up, and then further down it starts to become concrete and wires and technology.
And so this is where you see all the monsters that are in these like glass cages, and it's kind of like a Willy Wonka type elevator because it just moves all around. So it's like you get close-ups of certain ones. So you see the Sugar Plum Fairy up close, you see Pinhead up close, and then it pulls back and you see hundreds of just horrible, evil things all trapped in these cages, and you realize that's what all the stuff in the
Absolutely,
basement was.
they were all doorways to these nightmare creatures, and like you mentioned, the way they present it is almost like a roller coaster. Like you drop down,
Yeah,
and it just
and it can go. It goes side to side, and it's totally Willy Wonka's elevator thing.
absolutely. So then they exit I would say the containment cube into the actual facility where the director has given them orders to leave the girl safe, but kill
Yes.
the stoner because he has to die first.
Yes, they make it very clear that he cannot die
Absolutely.
before
So
she does.
there's this bone, and this is another weird plot hole that if this was so important, why did they put one security guard on that door? Immediately.
Right? So, but then I guess they have a whole team of them because he's the security guard is the one
Right.
that sees them on the camera and he figures out where they are. So and at that point, he's really into it. If you hear him, he's like, there they are. Like he's
Right.
all about finding them. Before he was a little timid about his position. And he sends that whole team to the elevators and somehow, oh no, you're right.
Yeah,
They
which was
just send the
weird. They
one
sent like
guy.
the one security detail, and he gets overtaken. Yeah.
Yeah. He and then the dismembered hand crawls up and covers his mouth. It's like one of the Buckner's hands that have fallen off into the
Very
into
Evil
the
Dead.
elevator with him.
Very Addams Family. Little callback.
Yes.
And then Marty and
Yeah.
Jules make it to the control panel where for some reason they have this cartoonishly large red button that's like,
Which I used to work in the security industry, and I did videos about stuff like this, and one of them actually focused on this part of this movie, because why would you have that button? Why is there an override button to unlock every single door in the entire building when you house nothing but like vicious
it doesn't make any
monsters?
sense whatsoever.
Why is that needed? When
Never.
are you going to need
if anything, there's a button
Never.
to lock it all down, or maybe
Never.
to euthanize them all if you need to.
Right. Like maybe release some poisonous gas into the cubes with them, fine. But to let them all loose, like you're setting free like lab rats that have been or monkeys that have been tested on or something. No.
Unneeded, but needed for this weird, crazy plot.
Right.
Yes, which
needed
is
for the best scene in the movie.
Undoubtedly, probably one of the top 5 scenes in horror history. In a weird, maybe top 10. I'll give it that. Top 10.
It might be the
Where
funniest scene I've
Dana
ever seen.
hits the button and says, "Let's party," and you literally have. It reminds me of the scene in the movie Avengers, where you find the first Avengers. You finally get to see all the Avengers fighting at the same time, and it's this through shot of them doing their thing, and it looks cool and epic and comic booky. But on the reverse, you have that ding. You have all the doors open at the same time, and just a rush of everything imaginable just thrown on the screen.
I mean, it's just like an explosion of blood at this point. And I'm a horror movie fan, so of course I'm like sitting there trying to see every possible like horror movie villain that they've dragged into this to see if I can figure out who is who. I'm basically thinking of the board and trying to think who I can find, who I can pick out.
Absolutely. It's one of the most paused scenes in recent history.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so is the scene with I remember when we first bought it, I paused that scene to see the board so I could like see what monsters were listed.
Absolutely. And you see the werewolf getting loose, you see the giant cobra, you see this weird mechanical buzzsaw spider.
Oh yeah. The robot scorpion type thing.
I don't think it was on the board. I don't know what that thing was.
I didn't either. I was like, is it a weird transformer? Is it? I don't know what that was supposed to be.
What if that's Kevin and it's like
What it is? from now on in my head, it's going to be. That's going to
Kevin
be
is some kind of acronym. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And the entire facility has gone haywire. These things have in 2 seconds overrode the entire building, which also on a security standpoint makes me think they had no fail safes for if this situation happened.
Listen, that spec writer would have been fired immediately because
it just doesn't make any sense.
There is
right?
Well, no, they're either in a facility like that. You either have a fail safe if you're using electrical locks, you have fail safe or fail secure, and it didn't. There would never be a giant override button, let's say.
And so you see, there's two sides of this going on. You see our titular, the titular, the final kids trying to make their way through this temple.
Yeah, Dana and Marty.
And you see the two office personnel, trying to get this under control.
Yes, and the Kim girl's still there, and she's panicking, and they literally, because the room that Marty and Dana are in just becomes soaked in blood, and you can't even see out the glass anymore, so they have to leave.
Absolutely. So, and the dragon bat kind of busts in.
Yes, the dragon bat flies in
and causes a sense of urgency. He creates a call to action, as it were.
You would think he would realize that was it. Like he had two prime meals right in front of him, but I guess he didn't have time.
No, he wanted that security guard with 100 pounds worth of armor on rather than these two kids in jeans and t-shirts. But I don't know. But then we start seeing another splash where we start seeing other monsters like the Pennywise clown. No, it's okay.
You cut
no worries.
Sorry, I didn't hear what.
I was just talking about the Pennywise clown. The unicorn scene happens at this time.
Yes, yeah, the unicorn, and it kills some paper pusher guy because he's just wearing a button down and a tie, and you know what? That's when you see the doctors. They look up on the screen. And they're doing surgery on somebody. They're getting ready to do surgery.
That's why I thought it was the ones with the white faces.
So you're right. No, those people walk in with suitcases. But if you look up on this, I don't know. I just watched it last night.
I thought they were medical bags, but I have to double check that. I will confirm before this episode goes out who those people were. This must be known.
Yes.
And the others, I would say office personnel, finally gets his wish and sees he
sees his merman.
And it's so majestic and beautiful.
It is. It's really ugly. It's a lot fatter than I expected a merman to be. And I did not like how when he ate him, all the blood blew out.
It was so, I did not expect the blowhole gag, and that made me laugh.
No. It did make me laugh because his reaction, because he goes, come on, when he sees him, because it's all this smoke and fog, and he's kind of dazed because he had just been thrown out of the way.
He couldn't escape it. There's no way he could have escaped it.
No, and the merman's not even. I mean, he's just flopping along, literally like a fish out of water.
He was the most easily avoidable creature, but
right. No wonder he never it's probably good that they never chose him.
They just would have let him stay in the little. They stay out the lake and you win. You're fine.
Right, just get on dry land and you're good.
It's at this point where Dana and Marty make it to the final temple. I want to say, right?
Yes. And if you remember, I pointed out that at one point, Marty saved Dana, and she isn't going to return the favor because she gets the gun from Sigourney Weaver's character, and she's totally about to take him out.
Sigourney Weaver lets her know that, if he doesn't die, humanity as you know it will cease to exist. And she puts that instant weight on her shoulders.
Right. So she's basically, if you kill him, you get to live.
But he has to die no matter what. You know what I mean? And he's like, nah, I don't care. Let's society crumble. It doesn't matter.
Right. But then he has the secret. But then the werewolf shows up.
Right. and the werewolf kind of there's two creatures that really show up. It's the werewolf that takes out what was her name? Dana, thank you. And then while Marty's tussling with Sigourney Weaver, the Buckner child,
Patience Buckner,
the MVP of the movie,
right?
She shows up and straight tomahawks Sigourney Weaver in the back of her head and calls that a night. Didn't
you kind of feel like Patience kind of knew what was up?
Yeah, I think she was. I think all the monsters intuitively want to do it because they, on some instinctual level, know that this will bring out the end of the world. You know what I mean?
I think that Patience was just kind of tired. She's like, man, I'm tired of being a ploy in this game. And because she walks right past Dana. Yeah. Doesn't even give her a second look. She just goes straight for Sigourney.
Yep. Almost like she's seen her face before. Almost like she knew who she was. You know what I mean?
Yes. She's like, you're the reason that this all happened. Like, you guys created me and used me for your,
crazy ambitions. You know what I mean?
Yes. So. And she straight tomahawks her in the back of the head.
And we get
with her one little arm.
With her strong hand, Her
strong arm.
This is my strong arm. Sorry.
And then, are perfectly fine waiting on the steps.
Yep, we're perfectly fine waiting on the steps. They're apologizing to each other. My bad for trying to kill you.
She did seem sincere. I'll give her that.
Yeah, and he was like, don't worry about it. My bad for ending the world.
I won't let it happen again.
Yeah, let's let someone else give this a shot.
Yeah, he's like, it's time. And they're both sitting there and they're just smoking a joint. And I will say that I do kind of feel like, when the hand shoots up at the end and takes everything out, it's like the hand of one of the ancient gods.
Oh yeah.
It's a little corny.
I wish it was something like a tentacle or some.
Something like Lovecraft.
Thank you.
Lovecraftian style.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Something like a Lovecraftian unknowable,
Yes, something like that instead of a hand.
A human hand that looks like Montezuma or something,
Yes, it was basically like a hand made out of lava.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit of a cop-out towards the end. Like you said, I wish it was something a little bit more abstract.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
But it was a fair enough close to a roller coaster of a film. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you had no idea going into this movie, which most people didn't, I think that you would have just had it's kind of like how you have your mouth wide open when you're watching Hereditary.
Absolutely.
But in a lighter, funnier way.
This movie reminds me a lot of From Dusk Till Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
How your expectations of the beginning of the film have a tonal shift, a hard left turn towards the center.
Yes.
Where
it's not what you think it's going to be.
Right. You walk in thinking you're going to get a heist, Quentin Tarantino film, and then halfway through you're in a Robert Rodriguez vampire-a-thon.
Yes, and Selma Hayek is there to suck your blood.
Santimonio Pandorum and stuff. And I think this film plays with that a lot to where when as long as no one spoils it for you, you will be surprised,
Right. And I hate to say I accidentally spoiled this one for myself. Mm-hmm. And it's usually I don't mind spoilers at all. I'm okay with them. But this one I was actually really disappointed that I knew what was going to happen. But when my husband and I went and saw it, he did not know. So it was fun to watch his reaction because he had no clue what was going on.
Yeah, I love subjecting my friends to Psycho who've never seen Psycho before.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Just to say, have you seen Psycho? No, you've never seen Psycho? Okay, movie night. And I just like them trying to put it together. And I'm like, it's satisfying for me,
Yeah, just wait. Sit back and watch. So.
Yeah, like I had a friend who never seen the original Alien. And I'm like,
oh my God. I have friends that haven't seen Jaws, which blows my mind.
Jaws is like my favorite horror movie of all time, actually.
Same.
Oh my goodness. So, Whitney, for this film, we like to do a 0 to 5 star rating, meaning 0 being you would set it on fire and watch it burn, or you would you would call it the apex of horror cinema. Where would you rate this film on a scale from 0 to 5?
Me, I would rate it. I'm gonna give it a 4.25 because A+ for originality, A+ for plot, but then they kind of lose some points, like I said, with the easy out of the zombies that they chose for the antagonists or whatever, and they lose more for that hand at the end because it really just kind of
I have a very similar score. Like I'll give it a 4.5 because like you said, amazing creativity, great submersion of expectation. But what kills it for me is also that hand that really bothered me. It kind of was a wet thud at the end of the movie.
Yes.
And also the bird in the electric net that really bothered me.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. But that's the same. It gave it away.
It totally ruined that scene for me, and it kind of left a bad taste until the pop where all the monsters rush in. That kind of put me back on board.
Yeah. But it brought you back up. You were like, okay, I'm back at 4.5.
We're good to go. Cool. So where can we find you, Whitney?
So I am the content director at spinsucks.com, which is a professional development company for up-and-coming communications professionals. And so you can find me at Twitter at @wit_danhauer. And that's about it. That's my favorite social media platform. So that's where I am most of the time.
Nothing wrong with that. Twitter is my favorite as well.
Yeah,
so
it's a good one.
It's a very good one. Very good way to find like-minded individuals and build a community, which we hope we're doing as you're listening to this episode.
Yes.
And you can always find this episode on @mnerdiverse. That is @mnerdiverse, where you can always see our daily content. I'm always posting crazy stuff, posting polls, asking questions, answering questions. We're just we're a big happy family on Twitter.
Yeah.
With Punch and Pie.
Exactly. That's how I found you guys.
Yep, and I'm very happy and want to thank you from the bottom of my giant comic book heart for you being a guest on this episode. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I had a blast.
Perfect. And if you're listening to this and would like to support us monetarily, we have a Patreon at mastersofnerdversecast.com where you can donate the infinitesimal amount of $1 a month, and that would help support the channel and make us stronger like a bull. But if you want to support us non-monetarily, you can always leave a like on our content, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment letting us know how we're doing. I've of course been your host, Mike G, and I will always ask you to look towards the skies. Look towards the skis.